Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns. My name is Alan. With me as always is Sol.
Hello!
And this being a Bond episode, we of course have a very special guest. And this week, very special, we are joined by Dame Judy Dench.
Hello there, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Dame Judy. We're looking forward to seeing the climax of your Bond career here. Unless you're planning some sort of ghost comeback in another film.
I know you're joking about that, but have you seen Spectre?
The spectre of Dench upon our shoulders.
I haven't seen Spectre, and I have no idea how much of this is actually a joke. How much of this is...
Now, that voice you hear, the slightly effeminate voice there, was Calvin Dyson.
Yeah, hello, I barely needed to affect it in any way to achieve that.
Right. So, yes, we are back on the Bond train, of course. We find ourselves here so often. Well, when was the last one? What was the last one, Calvin?
Quantum of Solace was the last one, but it's not a problem that you don't remember it, Alan, because the series forgets about it from this point on, so don't worry about that. But do you remember Casino Royale? You must remember that one.
Yeah. So how long was the gap in real life, though? How long were we waiting for this one, Calvin?
It was 4 years. There was a load of financial troubles at MGM in between the making of these films. I think it was originally... Roger Michell was going to direct it at one point, and I think it was due to come out in 2010, 2011, something like that, and then it got postponed a little bit, and Sam Mendes came on board.
Should we touch on this very briefly, because the Bond franchise is historically certainly for as long as I've been aware, really struggled to get its shit together just from like a business financial point of view, and it's been like a whole thing. Every single Bond movie, it's like, oh, they're going bankrupt, what's gonna happen? And they've, since our last Bond episode, MGM, I believe, have been bought by Amazon.
Yep, correct. All went through, so they now own James Bond, Pink Panther, Misery.
I mean, is that the best good? Amazon could do?
Well, I think what Amazon from a well, that's Warner Brothers, isn't it? Which is, I think MGM have been on the wane for many decades now. They used to obviously be one of the main big studio players in Hollywood. Obviously, less so now, particularly when you compare it to Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal. And what Amazon wanted to do essentially was just buy a big-ass production house with a bunch of people who know how to make films, and that's what they've got now.
I bet that Amazon could have bought Paramount. Jeff Bezos
possibly
went to space for a laugh. And not only did he go to space for a laugh, but he took William Shatner up there. That's how much of a fucking
he's taking the piss
about it was. Yeah. He took a 90-year-old man up there.
They were hoping it would kill him, but he managed to come through.
Paramount is owned by Viacom. I don't really know what. It's all these things with many fingers and many pies, and I think MGM was probably cheaper than
of course it was.
Buying Paramount, and I think property-wise...
no question it was cheaper than Paramount. Jesus Christ. Paramount's like a viable company.
Property-wise, it has James Bond, and I think it has some kind of percentage of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I don't quite know what the rights were going to be for this TV show that Amazon's producing already, but yeah, I guess it makes it easier for them to have it all under one umbrella.
Mm.
What a lot of the articles and stuff, it's just amusing when you see people talk about they now own the entire MGM catalogue, like Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
It's, the MGM catalogue prior to...
that?
Well, this is it. The MGM catalogue prior to 1980 was sold off at one point to Warner Brothers.
There we go.
So MGM made the films originally, but now Warner Brothers owns like all of the big golden age classic kind of ones.
Do you think Jeff Bezos was aware of that? Or
did Amazon know that? They got screwed.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
He's like rubbing his little hands together with watching Wizard of Oz.
How do you feel just from like an ethical point of view, Calvin? Because Amazon, they're a little bit dodgy. I mean, capitalism.
Unlike all those
in
other film corporations.
Well,
nice.
At least you can take a bathroom break when you're at Disney, from what I've heard. But
Calvin?
Well, I think from a money perspective, you touched on MGM's constantly in financial troubles and going bankrupt and in liquidation, and always manages to come out somehow. And I think from a money perspective, it's great to think that they'll have the money to put towards making these films. Unlike
that's the problem with Bond films; they've been notoriously low budget affairs.
Well, it does tend to be like I don't really know how these things, they have money thrown at them from like product placements and all that kind of stuff. But
I mean, I'll be honest, to kind of bring us back to Skyfall, to say these are such hugely expensive movies, I didn't really feel like you saw it all on the screen in this one.
Oh, really?
Well, it turns into just like Home Alone at the end, which is like a fairly low budget Bond movie. It's like a bottle movie. You've got one set, a couple of actors, then like a load of extras with guns. I don't know.
But that's the last half hour of a 2.5 hour film.
Yeah, well, I mean,
They'd run out of money by that point.
That's their problem, isn't it?
They were filming it in order, and they ran out of money.
But I mean, not to get ahead, that was clearly the best part of the film, and I assume most people would agree with that. And therefore, you could very easily make a very low budget James Bond movie. It seems like, because you could just do that for more of the film.
Well, you make a good point. I think having Sam Mendes on board gives them a different kind of focus. Obviously, he's, particularly at this point, was far more known for dramas. I know he directed Jarhead, but I've never seen it. I don't know if that counts as an action film. I'm assuming there are flourishes of action in it. But this is a Bond film where there are probably really only 3 big scale action sequences. I think there's, pepperings of fights and whatnot throughout, but you've got the pre-title sequence in Turkey, and then there's the sequence in the middle on the London Underground, all that stuff, and then the big sequence at the house. And even then, the sequence at the house it's a very small bunch of people, like maybe like 15 people, one big explosion.
Can I preface this discussion before we get into it proper, just by saying that I only watched this film for the first time last night, about 8 hours ago, went to sleep and just woke up to record this. So I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about this film, and I'm kind of collecting my thoughts as we go. So if it sounds like I'm being contradictory and saying things that are inconsistent with other things that I'm saying, that's why.
Business as usual.
Yeah. Just a little disclaimer there. But I only saw it for the first time. But Alan, you've seen this before, I assume.
Yeah, way back when. Yeah, way back when. The obvious thing to note here overall is that when they brought in the Daniel Craig Bond, they kind of rebooted it, and now they're starting to throw those ingredients back in. So we get Q and Moneypenny.
That was a really weird thing with this film, because, I mean, we spoke about Casino Royale and how it didn't feel like it was meant as quite the hard reboot that it was at the time. It just felt like Casino Royale could have taken place within that same continuity. It was just like a new spin on it. But then the sequels are the things where it's kind of like, oh no, you have to draw a hard line in the sand in terms of like this character being reintroduced and stuff. It doesn't all add up anymore. I'm amazed that in the third film in this sort of rebooted series, we're still playing prequel. There's still like a cheer audience applause moment at the end where we reveal that a character is Miss Moneypenny, and come on, stand on your own 2 feet. You're nearly done with this run. You're literally halfway through it.
Well, I'm curious to know how you guys feel about some elements of this, because I agree it is still doing the he's becoming James Bond that we know and love kind of thing, but at the same time they're leaning into a lot of he's out of shape, he's antiquated, he's old-fashioned, we don't need you anymore, we have computers doing your work. He's sort of fighting for relevance through a big part of this, and there's obviously, I mean, it's quite explicit, the old versus new kind of themes that run throughout, which is quite odd to say that, yeah, they are still doing a lot of that setup kind of stuff, but Craig himself is portrayed as being old and out of shape, and he needs to sort of
and he was only in his mid-50s at this point, so we had a long way to go yet.
But I mean, I think I found that all very odd. It strikes me as It strikes me as weird that they didn't plan this all out a bit better and go, right, the first one or two we're going to do is like
they don't
setting
plan
it all
anything.
Up. I know.
They usually don't even have a script when they start filming.
I know, but it's just this reminder that Hollywood is just utter shambles.
Yeah, it's a fucking shambles. That's exactly what it is.
And people...
They don't know what people want. They don't know what they're doing.
Well, it's amazing because it's not that hard to figure it out. And people complain about Marvel being this like well-oiled machine, but I genuinely think it's very refreshing that you can rely upon like 3 or 4 films a year from one studio where they do know exactly what they're doing and they do make things very well to, you know, a tightly formulated, you know, recipe, compared to every other studio just sort of flailing around, shooting themselves in the foot by mistake, like smearing shit on walls and occasionally through sheer like chance making something people resonate with. And it's not just MGM, you know, Sony are the ones that really spring to mind, but Paramount, Warner Brothers, they all don't know what the fuck they're doing.
You don't even have to go studio wide. Just like think of the franchise, the Bond franchise. Just you're churning the same thing out every 2 years. Just hit the main ingredients people want to see, and just throw in a little bit to keep it fresh. But
well,
then
I think they
can't
just try and pull it in a certain direction. Like, oh, you know, culturally, people feel a bit more Me Too-y this time round, so let's throw a bit of that in there.
Let's try and make Bond a bit less rapey.
But then you're still mixing that in with everything else, and yeah, it's just I don't know.
Well, it should be said before we get into it in more detail, this is still unadjusted for inflation, the most financially successful Bond film of them all. This was the second highest grossing film of 2012 behind The Avengers.
But you know, the problem with that is the one that made the most money. If people didn't go to see the next one, that means it was shit. Because everyone went to see that one based on the one before.
That's true. That means everyone loved Quantum of Solace, Calvin.
Yeah.
Well, this one had... This was the 50th anniversary of the Bond franchise, of course. So it had all of that. And crucially...
Because at the end, where it normally says James Bond will return, this time it said 50 years James Bond will return. And I was like, oh, that's surprisingly accurate. How did they know it was going to take so long?
Well, this was also the year of the London Olympics, where Daniel Craig had a little short with the Queen herself.
Oh, I remember that, when they parachuted into the Olympics.
There you go. Yeah, that was just a few months before this film. So I think that promotion certainly helped when you think of how many people watch the Olympic opening ceremonies and whatnot.
How come when the Queen parachuted in, she looked like a sort of 6'2" man in a dress? What's that about?
It's just physics, Alan. It's the momentum, like it stretches your body out.
It's like the perspective of something. Yeah.
Right, can we talk about the opening for the film then? The pre-title sequence.
Well, very, very quickly, Calvin. We spoke about how I first came to this film. We spoke about how Alan first came to this film. I think we can assume you went to like a midnight screening or something when it was first released. But how many times have you seen it since, would you estimate?
Oh, God. I saw it 4 times at the cinema. And it's one of the ones that I've probably seen the most. This is one of my absolute favourites. At one point, I would have cited it as my favourite of them all. So countless dozens of times. But no, I saw it opening.
Don't you say that about them all, though? When you first see it, you go, "This is the best one ever."
No. I didn't think that about Quantum of Solace.
You still loved it, though. You still
yes. I liked it a lot at the time. But this one, I saw it opening night when it first came out, and it was a good crowd. It was packed audience. Everyone was laughing at bits where you should be laughing. And
sorry, laughing.
Yeah. Wait, what? Sorry, what? There's jokes.
There were funny bits. There were funny bits.
Where? Go on.
All right, give me a second, because I'm going to try and remember one of these jokes. There's one funny bit where Judy Dench gives him a bit of sass.
He falls in the water, and then when he comes back, he says, "Sorry, I got into some water."
There's that the bit where he jumps on the tube train, and that guy says he's keen to get home.
Oh, no. Can I ask you about that, Calvin? Okay, just because you live in Wimbledon, right?
Yes.
Oh, no, you didn't live in Wimbledon back then, though, so you didn't wet yourself.
Yeah, be honest, how much of your decision to move to Wimbledon was influenced by the fact that that is the destination signed up on that particular tube train very blatantly in this film?
Funnily enough, I'd already decided to move to Wimbledon after seeing this film. And in fact, I saw it for the first time at a cinema in Wimbledon. And not knowing that shot was going to be in there. But of course, everyone will know that that kind of train does not go to Wimbledon. That is a Piccadilly line train, I believe.
Total bullshit.
With a Wimbledon sign on it, but it's not District line.
All right, well, let's get into it then. And it starts with this... I don't know where they got this idea, but they had this masterstroke to kind of pretend that James Bond dies at the start. and you watch it, and you watch it, you think, oh my God, he's dead. James Bond's going to die.
He does die. I turned it off after that because I thought, well, this is going to be a crap Bond film without Bond.
Yeah. I mean, why are we still doing this now?
Well, this one has more of a point. I think this one feels more thematically resonant throughout the rest of the film about him coming back from the dead and resurrection.
It's like a cool little scene. And if it was the first time they played with this bag of tricks, maybe it would be all right. But I genuinely thought it was fucking pathetic. Because it's James Bond, so we know he's not dead. Of course you're not going to kill him off in the first 2 minutes of the film. If you're going to do that, you're going to make a fucking 5-hour movie and spend about 3 hours at the end of it, like, making a big song and dance about it.
But they don't, like, drag it out. Like, obviously we all know he's not really dead. It's just, like, the suspense is like, well, what happened to him? What's he doing? Is he hiding in Tahiti, banging ladies? Ooh.
Yeah, but then... Was there like a point from a story point of view to the whole? Because obviously it turns out very soon after that James Bond faked his own death as a means of retiring. He wanted out.
What? Well, you know, you're giving it a far more organized. He was doing his job, got shot, assumed dead, and then he obviously went, if people think I'm dead, I'm going to disappear. He didn't sort of... He didn't
I don't mean he planned it ahead. Yeah, I just mean he kind of took the opportunity to be like, I'm sick of this, and left.
Yeah.
I think it works for a multitude of reasons. I think it works, as I say, I think it perhaps works more thematically for what they're going to do with Bond in this, but I think it's more like it's Judy Dench's M who gives the order for her to shoot, for Moneypenny to shoot, even though she's saying, like, oh, I can't, I might hit Bond. M still says it, and so much of this film is about their relationship. And
okay. But wouldn't that have worked just as well, if not better, if we had that scene and then it cut, you know, after Adele sings a song, we have James Bond in a hospital bed and Judi Dench bringing him some grapes and him going, you bloody shot me, you silly cow. and her going, oh, James, do behave, have some grapes and all that, you know.
That would have been great.
And then you don't have all
the whole film is, you know, when you turn up to a hospital visiting and it's like a 2-hour visiting session, and you can't leave halfway through. That just seems like you're taking the piss. So you have to sit there for 2 hours making small talk.
Can I ask what you guys thought of the whole action sequence that is the start of this film? Because it's one of my very favourites in the series, and particularly coming off of Quantum of Solace, where it felt like every action sequence was just a montage. You could barely understand the A to B to C.
I must say, Quantum of Solace was such a sack of shit that it is... I guess I probably forgot to take into account just what a breath of fresh air it is to go back to real... like film sequences where they've actually like shot something, planned out what they're going to shoot, edited it, you can tell what's happening, so that's really nice. I can't say anything about the opening scene really stood out to me. I did like the little shot that was very, very prominently used in the marketing at the time, where James Bond jumps onto the back of a blown up train and then sort of catches his balance and adjusts his shirt.
Just flashes the
sleeve. He sort of adjusts his sleeve, doesn't he? And
to show off the watch. So that's what it's for. They're paying a lot of money.
Well, that was it in the marketing, taken out of context. I just thought, like, oh, that's so fucking dumb. But in the context of that whole scene, it was such a small little detail that isn't like focused on, that it was actually all right. So
I must say that it was annoying me that he was wearing a tie throughout the whole thing. It just seems stupid. It's just very restrictive. I wanted to get like snagged on a little bit of fence. And it's just like, oh.
And then Judy Dench could have ordered that she shoot the tie to like get him free.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought he was going to hold up the tie and there'd be like a cartoon bullet hole through it, and he'd be like, "Ooh, that was good."
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be really good.
See, this is what we need.
Fantastic.
I never thought I'd say this, Calvin, but I think we might need to get back to the Roger Moore style.
Oh my god!
Of stupid camp
Oh,
comedy.
it's coming. It's coming.
They've got to now. They've been taking it so seriously for 20 years. They've got to...
They're not gonna pull the Batman on us and just do like the same thing again. They're totally gonna go like a bit fun and camp with it, and
Johnny English.
Then we'll see. Yeah.
But yeah, so this opening, the whole opening thing, it's just a big long action sequence, which is not really my bag. But you know, like you say, fine. It's all right. And it does at least have a purpose. It sets up the rest of the plot. And one thing I noticed, actually, overall in general, there isn't really a proper Bond girl situation in this. I guess M is the Bond girl. Is that what we're dealing with here?
In a way, yeah.
The emotional drive.
Yeah. I think it's quite good of them, really, to have the... is it courage? I don't really know. I mean, it's definitely breaking from one of the key elements of why people might go and see these films. It's certainly a part of the formula, and for them to not have
Who goes to see a James Bond film because they can't wait to see the new Bond girl?
Well, it's a part of the formula. I don't know if people would be disappointed by the lack of a pretty young thing at the end. I think it's interesting that they made the choice to have it. Oh no, it's Bond who's already in middle age here, and then a couple of old people sort of holding the fort at the climax. But anyway, we'll get there.
I mean, they do chuck a load of women in there.
Some sexy ladies, yeah.
Yeah, there was someone who had was she a redhead, or was it just a kind of reddish tint to her brown hair? I can't remember.
Yeah,
I definitely sat up and went, "Oh, hello, is that a Bond girl?"
Well, the thing is, there is one bit where they kind of introduce this woman who she's a bit of a dark, mysterious femme fatale kind of figure, and then it's like, "Oh, so you were a child prostitute sold into slavery," and then 5 minutes later she gets shot very unceremoniously. It's like, "Oh, nice one, guys." Yeah. Very glamorous Bond girl story, which I think is quite good that they kind of like they're playing into that darker side of stuff.
That's actually quite a controversial scene, particularly amongst the fandom. I kind of like it. It's I don't know if I needed her to kind of hang around for the rest of the film. I think it's quite a good, shocking moment. It makes Javier Bardem's villain really bad.
I think because Bond clearly doesn't give the slightest toss. That's sort of perhaps the like he doesn't care either. Javier Bardem not caring is what makes him a bad guy.
Yeah,
it just feels like, well, Bond, you could have done the whole shoot everybody and call in the helicopters like 5 minutes ago, and she would still be alive.
So then we after Bond's shot dead, we get an opening title sequence that I always want to get into these. The only good Adele song.
There's a Skyfall.
I have written down the note, and they crumbohl. Which, good song, isn't it?
I love
Oscar
it.
Winning.
Yeah.
Oscar
winning. Yes.
I think I've complained about this on the show before, but I do find it incredibly like annoying now that I'm aware just how much she goes, and they crumble, and they Skyfall. Like honestly, just listen out for it. Her inhaling is so. Tay Zonde taught us you're meant to turn away from the mic to breathe in, and you'd think Adele would have enough stagecraft, enough professionalism to know to not breathe into the mic like that. You'd also think whoever's editing the song together in post would like just lower it. If Adele was guesting on Diminishing Returns, I tell you right now, we would lower her channel whenever you hear the and you'd never hear it. It would never get to so it's pretty bad, isn't it? Whoever was producing that song didn't even bother with that. You can also hear the clunking on the piano as well. You know when you hear that in a song recording, when sometimes the kind of not the string itself, but the kind of clunk of the pedal in the mix as well.
Fucking amateur hour, isn't it?
It was. It was just fucking shite. But
what did you think of the sequence itself visually?
It was fine. Nothing about it jumped out at me particularly. I liked all the sky falling very literally near the end because it was just like, oh, Bond's gone a bit post-apocalyptic here. They should do a whole movie of this where the sky's falling and they have to hide up hole up in a bunker or something. And
I don't know, the whole opening sequence thing. It's so 1980s. Nobody does it anymore.
Oh, I love that they keep the tradition alive, though. I wish more films did a good, proper opening title sequence.
Was there any silhouettes of naked ladies?
No, there was just an outright naked lady, I think. Not in silhouette.
That's the modern way, isn't it?
You only see it from
some silhouettes
behind.
in the Rorschach test bit. There's like a black and white.
You see what you want to see.
Bit.
I was going to say that says more about you than anything else, Calvin. If that's what you saw, then. Did they look like your mother?
All right, can we talk broadly about, I guess, the first act of the film, which is a lot of setup for what's going to come next, and a lot of it is with Judy Dench. She's very much, the main co-star in this, really, I think. The whole film is really about her and her character, what she's done, mistakes she's made, all that kind of stuff. How do you feel about that generally? I can't remember.
Cats.
We've obviously
2019.
we've obviously talked about her in previous episodes, but I can't remember how much of a fan you guys are, or not so much.
Well, you've got to like the Dench. Yeah, I think she's a great presence here, actually, in general, in the Bond franchise.
She is an ever dependable talent, Judy Dench. She's a national treasure for a reason. I can't say she ever did anything to particularly wow me in the previous films, but, it's nice to have her there. This is the first time I feel like she's really had an opportunity to do something interesting, and yeah.
But I think from a character point of view, there's a value to going with this sort of person, because, the concept of the M, the head of MI6 is some sort of stuffy old man, and to modernize that, to bring into it not just a woman, but a woman who is obviously not someone who you would throw out as a field agent and expect to kind of kick ass. She's not a kick. She has an authorial presence. And then what they really lean into, particularly in this one, obviously, is that just vaguely maternal aspect, but not by making her maternal, but just by making her, in the same way if it was an old man who ran this thing, it would be a paternal instinct. You know what I mean? These younger agents who have known this person for 20 years and have kind of looked up to them, and ultimately they're there to protect them. And so then the duality of that, where she has to, and Bond understands this ultimately as well, she has to kind of go, oh, this person, I'm going to have to let this person die because of the bigger picture. And Bond understands that, Javier Bardem doesn't, and that's kind of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, exactly. Did it... I know it's so long since we've seen The World Is Not Enough, and I don't think either of you liked it very much, but there is overlap here with that film. They both have MI6 attacked at the start, an explosion. They're both about a villain with a personal vendetta against Judi Dench's M, trying to capture her, all that. Did any of that jar for you, feel too familiar?
I'm pretty used to James Bond just repeating the same stuff over and over and over again, so no, it didn't really jump out at me.
I just thought, like, how did they get permission to blow up the MI6 building? Surely.
So, meanwhile, all of this stuff with them is kind of setting up Ralph Fiennes, who I guess you'll probably know as he's going to stick around, for the next ones. Did you know that he becomes M, or do you remember what your feeling was the first time? Because I remember first watching this being kind of, he's Voldemort. He's potentially a villainous character. And indeed, they did want to make him a villain in the next one, but Ralph Fiennes has said recently that he pushed back on that and said to Sam Mendes, no, I'm not going to be the villain.
I see Ralph Fiennes and I think, oh, it's Coriolanus, but of course you go straight to Voldemort.
I can see how having a bit of conflict between M and the minister guy who they have to kind of deal with all the time would be good. But yeah, it's good for one film. I don't know if that's something you want to be dragging in all the time. And plus, you can do that with just kind of M just going like, oh, the Prime Minister's on my ass. I got to do this, all that kind of stuff.
This time I want to do it by the book.
Yeah. So you know, I don't know if you need a villainous character in that sense. Just going on about that with in terms of the kind of the political aspect of this, we see the Dench being grilled by some MPs about like, what the hell are you doing over there in MI6? I know it's supposed to be a secret, but we all know what building you're in for a start. Everyone's dying. What's going on? And then she stages like a false flag operation where one of her own agents comes and shoots everybody to make it look like they're really needed.
Did you like the shades of Nedry from Jurassic Park whenever the computers would get taken over? That Javier Bardem had made a little
Dench going you did say the Nedry.
Javier Bardem had made a little animation, like he's obviously just been playing with After Effects.
Do you think he does that himself, or does he have a minion to do that for him?
He's got a minion to do the music, but I think he does the animation himself
because it's personal. It's quite it's like her face.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on some of the opening scenes again from Craig's perspective. Bond, obviously, this is I think it's the most directly, clearly influenced by Ian Fleming's James Bond. A lot of these opening sequences where he's clearly very depressed, he's just drinking for the sake of it, he's very down and out, I guess, which you see a lot of, particularly in the later Flemings. Like, this does feel like an adaptation of some of the last Ian Fleming books, where he's just dealing with some malaise and the perspective, a point.
Like, chitty chitty bang bang.
But but why? Like, did I miss something? Why is he that upset with his life?
Well,
The love of his life died a couple of films ago, but it's not like he mentions her.
Well, just wait for the next couple of films. In this one specifically, I think it is, Alan touched on the whole mother side of things earlier on. I think a part of it is how he feels about
Judy Dench. She's got issues.
Well, I think it's leaning into a bit of that personal conflict, but also this was the 50th film, and I think some of this commentary is a bit meta about the series itself.
Getting tired.
I could totally get behind that if this wasn't such a freshly rebooted James Bond that's drawing a clear line in the sand. Like, we saw him starting out pretty much, didn't we, in Casino Royale? And
well, This is the thing. Continuity-wise, it's a bit messy. The later Craig films dispel this, but around about the time that Skyfall was released, there was a Bond game called 007 Legends that came out, which seemed to suggest that, obviously floating timeline, it's not linear, but it suggested that basically Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace are the start of the timeline, everything else happens in the middle, and then Skyfall is kind of you have to die another day kind of thing. It hinted at it, it suggested it. It was never fully canon, but as I say, the next Craig films will just make it clear that that's definitely not the case. But
if they'd done that and they'd done a scene like explaining that in the film, that would have worked.
But I don't know. What do you want? Have you seen this way this guy lives? He's depressed. He's fucking miserable. He's an alcoholic. Like, why is that so hard to understand?
Because we've never really seen any indication that it's taking a toll on him until he's... I mean,
the last film, like, when his missus died, and then he couldn't get over that for a while, and then he went on this whole revenge thing. Got revenge and then didn't feel any better for it. He's depressed.
Yeah, but this is, like I say, there's no mention of that woman or anything.
Because he doesn't like to talk about it.
Well, there's not even like a hint at the fact that that's what's still
that's the whole Bond thing, isn't it? Like, he drowns his sorrows in alcohol, he shags women to try and deal with his emotional issues, and obviously never opens up, so he never gets anywhere. The first time he does it, turns out she's trying to work against him and then has to drown her in a lift. I mean, no wonder he's got issues. His mum tried to kill him. Mum told his sister to shoot him, or whatever that was.
I feel like we're just skipping some pretty big steps in this franchise. Each film so far feels like it's been way too eager to kind of jump ahead, and I get it, right? They're only getting one of these films out every 50 years, so okay, they need to move quickly. But it just feels a bit like DC's approach to, Justice League. It's like, take a bit of time, build what you're doing, do it properly. This all just feels a bit messy, and I've got to do like mental gymnastics to make it all fit together after I've seen the film, which shouldn't be how it
But that's the way it goes. Like, every franchise needs its Iron Man 3 before it can really get going, and then maybe that's what Quantum of Solace was.
I like Iron Man 3. Right, so we're off to the races. Eventually, he has to go through all of his training and whatnot, but then we eventually get to... Well, actually, we have the Q scene. Ben Whishaw is introduced as Q.
Oh, yes.
How do we feel about him?
I mean, I was annoyed that their first scene, Bond's like, I don't know if you're going to be qualified, mate. You're a bit young.
About 18.
Qualified to what? To take a gun out of a locker and give it to you? Oh, that's so difficult. You could do it yourself, you lazy cunt. Fucking hell, James.
Yeah, but he's not. Just because James gets special treatment and the boss comes down to give him his gun, like, that could be an assistant's job, but he is still the one making the guns. And exploding pens.
I was going to say, if we had a scene where the new Q was like getting upset because someone's playing with his lunch that's left out, they think it's a gun or something, I'd get
lunch.
it. It just seemed a bit weird to be getting all upset. And then ultimately, it's Q's fault that Javier Bardem gets a virus in the system anyway, isn't it? So he wasn't qualified.
Yeah. Put a dirty
hired
USB in his laptop.
Yeah, they should have hired a stuffy old man instead.
Who really knows about computers.
But Ben Wishaw's fine. Yeah,
he's
whatever.
Amazing. But I
know you love him.
He's
fine here. He doesn't really. He's only got like 2 lines.
Oh yeah, but he does it so well. What kind of?
No, I don't know if he does because one of them he's like, oh, before my first cup of Earl Grey, and then fuck off. No one says. You just say tea. Doesn't matter if you drink Earl Grey. The only reason you would specify Earl Grey is if you're trying to be some sort of pretentious show-off who wants everyone to know that they don't.
Show-off. Just in a kind of nice way. It's for the Americans. But this, what threw me actually was because obviously I know Ben Whishaw is Q, so this scene is playing out and they're doing a little bit of banter and all that. And then it's kind of near the end, like we get well in where we realise, oh no, Bond just thinks this is some bloke chatting him up in an art gallery. It's like, oh, he doesn't realise who it is. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to watch this scene again now with a bit more of a different lens. But yeah, I go to the art gallery sometimes. No one's ever tried to chat me up about art. It's a shame. Ben Whishaw certainly never has. But yeah, but yeah, I really like Ben Whishaw. Generally speaking, this is peak Ben Whishaw as well. It's very sexy, and yeah, I like it. I like to set up the little dynamic between them that. Bond, you kind of have to earn your respect from Bond. You have to prove yourself, and he does that pretty quickly.
It's like a cat.
Oh, well, that's good because he's I love him. We'll have him in the next couple of films, obviously, and he's a really good, consistent presence. And he does actually learn from that mistake in No Time to Die. They do make a kind of a subtle reference, so keep that in the back pocket, Sol, about his error, sort of letting Javier Bardem into the system.
He actually updates his antivirus software in No Time to Die. That's why the film's so long, because you have to wait for 20 minutes while it downloads and installs.
That's because his password is PA55W0RD, and Javier Bardem saw right through it.
So, the next big chunk of the film, Bond heads to Shanghai. He's following some leads here and there. We have flourishes of action throughout these sequences. He gets into little fist fights and whatnot.
You know, sorry to go back. You know Javier Bardem's little viruses that his little anime. Did you like the way they all end with him going, "Think on,
think on your sins."
Think on, man.
That really made me laugh. Talking about the funny jokes in this film, that was one of the things that really made me laugh. Yeah, Calvin, have we missed any funny jokes? You mentioned there were like really funny bits in this film. Have we missed any of the actual funny jokes so far?
I think that the sequence with Ben Whishaw is nice and amusing.
I wouldn't say it's funny.
I like maybe a standards in general. There's no jokes to it. Q used to be funny.
Yeah.
I like the a gun and a radio. Not exactly Christmas, is it? Or what you were expecting an exploding pen? We don't go in for that anymore. I like that.
That's weak. Come on.
I like.
Come on, we don't make shit films anymore. 007.
It would have been better if he'd done that line and Bond sort of looked a bit crestfallen, and then he goes, "Here you go." Dips into the pocket. Here's an exploding pen, James. Go on, scamper on, you old. That's what old Q would have done.
or if he'd had to like improvise and he'd gone with like a Michael, like simply remove the lid off this pen and then jam it in someone's eye like that.
Well, this next stretch of the film is a bit jokeless, really. With Bond following.
It was a laugh riot up until this bit. So, yeah.
But I love the fight sequence in front of the big advertising billboard screen. I think that's all really good. It's all sort of done in one shot. Roger Deakins is the cinematographer. We should point out at this point.
Oh, is he really?
Probably explains why this is the best looking Bond film by some margin.
Yeah, certainly the best a Bond movie has looked to date.
He was nominated for an Oscar for this. It was.
See, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah. But Billie Eilish has won an Oscar for a Bond film. It's always just handing them out like confetti.
Yeah, but come on, nothing that happens in the 2020 Oscars, 2022 Oscars counts.
So we have a bit of Naomi. What's your feeling about Naomi Harris's character at this point? She appears to shave Bond, and
sorry,
I didn't mean that as in like.
I just took a second for me to process that, and then realised that you were just literally saying what happened. I thought there was definitely a joke in there somewhere, but no, that she just shaves him.
At this point, she's not Moneypenny. Sol, in particular, I'm curious to know if you had any indication that she would be Moneypenny, that she would even be a recurring character, because she is obviously in the advertising of the new ones. Yeah, but I don't know if you.
What she does has no relation to what Moneypenny is, who is basically a secretary.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a field agent at all. So there's no reason why we should even suspect such a thing.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I didn't suspect that. I mean, I'm sure if I'd really thought about it, I would have remembered people saying it. But to me, I just kind of went, "Oh, they're doing like a Bond girl field agent kind of thing? This will be the first of two Bond girls, probably." Okay. I mean, I liked her. I liked the dynamic. I feel like overall that scene was completely arbitrary and pointless. Like, I don't feel like her presence in the film adds anything other than, oh, by the way, I'm Moneypenny. Huh? Hey, fan service.
Yeah, but it's a little bit. They obviously decided like we're not going to have Bond doing a shagathon, but they just need a little bit of frisson, a little bit of sexual chemistry between someone.
He has that with Javier Bardem.
Yeah, but you need more than
he shags
one.
He shags a woman at the start.
That's just a shag.
He has a flirty conversation to get information out of a woman later on. And then he has a bit of flirting with Javier Bardem. That's enough.
Yeah, and then with Moneypenny. It's all right.
He has a bit of flirting with M. So, come on.
That's an Oedipal thing, though. It's different. But the scene where they finally meet again after he's come back and he's done his tests and everything, and she's like, "Oh, sorry, I shot you." I don't know. It was just it felt too Bond, like they were both trying to be so cool and like flippant about the fact that she shot him. Like, where it would have been really nice if she'd, maybe not for Bond, but if she'd had a moment where she was just like, "No, really, I'm really sorry, and I feel actually quite bad about it because I shot you." Like some genuine emotion and like acting and stuff.
It played to me like every field agent is like out shagging and drinking and driving cars with guns, and she's no different, and she was like trying to seduce Bond, which I sort of like that aspect. I would have liked it if he'd been a bit like less, like if she had to kind of really seduce him, like a Bond scene from her perspective.
I do think that the film it's interesting considering how much attention is obviously on the portrayal of women in Bond films, and particularly in the modern age, that two of the women in here, we've already touched on Severin, the character who is just sort of unceremoniously killed off and Bond doesn't really seem to give two shits, but then Moneypenny as well, whose entire arc in this film seems to be take a desk job and leave the action to me. It's bold, I think. I don't know if they maybe there would be a bit more thought given to that sort of thing.
But
that's
days. What I mean. If we'd had in that earlier scene where she is like seems really genuinely affected by the fact that she had to make that shot, and then so like just things where she's like, maybe she's gonna go, do you know what? I'm not the person who's gonna go out there and start shooting people. It's not me. I'm gonna help in the back room, which for some reason means I'm a secretary, just letting people into M's office. And I feel like there's a balance there somewhere where she could actually be doing something a bit more useful if she's got all these skills.
her arc really should be that she learns to kill again in the last film. I don't know if that's what happens, but like the end of Die Hard when the cop who's been helping him learns to shoot the guy. Yeah, that's...
So, Javier Bardem, he's the last major character who we're to discuss. I'm really curious to know how you feel about him. One of my favourite villains. Love him.
Right. Well, I think, just to make a bigger point here, I think what the film in general is missing is a villain plot. Like a proper villainous thing, because what the plot is like quite a small personal vengeance thing that he's taking too far. But that needs to be alongside, I'm turning water into oil and selling it to Americans or something.
I don't know. I think it could be alongside, like, I have a specific plan to,
laser gun on the moon,
bring down all of MI6 specifically, or But I mean, they're kind of dealing with that. But I agree, it doesn't quite. It all just feels a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah.
And, unfocused. But then I feel like all of this film is like that. All the stuff that it's doing is wishy-washy and unfocused. All the James Bond's depressed, he's staged his own death, he's trying to get out. That's wishy-washy and unfocused. I like Javier Bardem. It's nice when he turns up. I forgot that Javier Bardem and Christoph Waltz are not the same. I was just I was mentally primed for Christoph Waltz to walk through those doors, and then I was like, oh yeah, Javier Bardem, totally like not even the same.
Well, right, okay, so the big intro, Javier Bardem walks through, and we have this long shot of him walking along, basically giving a bit of backstory for himself. And it's a nice thing. It's like, obviously, okay, yes, we've got a proper director, and he's making these interesting decisions of introducing this way. But I was just so distracted, because all I could think of was like, look how tiny those steps he's having to make so we can fit this entire speech in this walk. Like, he's doing tiny little half steps. It was really infuriating me. Like, just walk over and talk.
I never noticed, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Calvin, from your perspective as a dare I say somewhat camp individual. Well, how did you feel about Javier Bardem's performance? Because I was watching it and I was just thinking, like, is that okay? And I don't know, is it okay? I'd like to hear your thoughts on what he's doing.
I love him in this film. He's one of my absolute favourite Bond villains. And I think that, from what I understand from some of the behind the scenes, like, a lot of this was his choice. Like, I think on the page, this is supposed to be just kind of another dark side of Bond kind of character. It could have been very boring. It was his idea to kind of do the Julian Assange hair, and he's got fake teeth in as well.
He pulls them out at one point.
Well, yes. Yeah,
I thought when he did that, I thought it was gonna, because we're still in prequel mode with these films, I thought that it was gonna turn out he was actually Jaws, and this was like a Jaws origin story. They were gonna put metal teeth in, and
I never thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
You'd look the part if you were casting a Jaws for the Craig era, do a lot worse than Javier Bardem.
But I think it's... I really like the scene where he's kind of getting a bit flirty with Bond, and he's sort of undressing his buttons a bit and rubbing his legs. Well,
I'd heard about all this, and I don't know. I guess I didn't. I just wasn't expecting Javier Bardem to kind of play it so kind of, oh, hello. Like, I thought he was going to just play it
I'm
like
a Latin lover.
As a But no, I'd heard all about Bond going a bit gay in this one, which was a bit of a talking point when this film came out.
But that's the annoying thing, isn't it? Like that this is what's considered like being too gay, and it's a bit controversial. Like, because this is the one thing I really want to see. Like, Bond is prepared to die for his country. I want to see him get bummed for his country. Okay, let's really put his loyalty to the test here.
But like, I mean, I'll be honest, it was more overt than I expected. I'd heard about this, and I thought, oh, it'll be nothing. It'll just be.
This is like when Disney do a gay character.
Well, yeah, I thought maybe you'd have Javier Bardem flirt with him, but the fact that then he sort of goes, was it Javier Bardem says something like there's a first time for everything or whatever, and then Bond sort of says, what makes you think it's my first time?
I went to college.
Yeah. Like, it's more implicit than or less implicit, I suppose, than I kind of was expecting. Calvin, how did this go down with the Bond community at the time? Because
notoriously homophobic Bond community.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't remember there being much. I think if it happened now, there would be far more like Bond goes woke kind of stuff online. Whereas, but I don't feel like that kind of thing was as prominent when this film was released. I remember there being the bigger discussions that were going on were kind of, has he literally slept with other guys, or is this just sort of like trying to psych out Javier Bardem and sort of do something unexpected in that moment? And obviously you do get people. I think in his job he would probably have to seduce men as well as women to get information out of them, so it makes perfect sense to me.
Do you think he enjoys it though, or do you think he just kind of does it? Is that why he's depressed? Because he's
I don't think he enjoys it when he does it with women. It's all just he's just working on autopilot most of the time.
I think he wants to though. It's like an alcoholic might not necessarily.
Yeah, but it's like your sex life, Sol. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
that's what I mean. That's
you have a drive to do it. Doesn't mean you enjoy it.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Do you think he's got that drive to do it with men in the same way?
It's all about the power. He doesn't care.
Yeah, well, you wanted to see him get bummed. I mean, that's
exactly a totally different power dynamic. You gotta reach a different place in yourself.
Yeah, unless you're a power bottom, in which case you take control
he's just
from
like he's
from the
slamming Javier Bardem down on the floor, pinning him down.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question about Bond fandom in general? Just talk about gayness and all that.
Sure.
Because I think our kind of idea of your typical Bond viewer is a bit like, ooh, cars, girls with tits. But my main contact with Bond fandom is you, and the other people that I've sort of associate with you are very much not that. So is it that the kind of real Bond nerds are not that way, or like is it just a different element of the demographic? Like what's going on there?
I think it can be generational. I think you'll tend to find that a lot of the people who grew up sort of with the 60s and 70s Bonds are perhaps a bit more like that, but they're also old now. Whereas I think there are fans like me who kind of... It's interesting understanding whether Bond fans kind of appreciate the levels of camp in these films or not. Like, if some people take them deadly seriously, or if you're kind of aware that they're all a bit sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Isn't this all a bit silly kind of thing? Yeah. I find that's an interesting divide in the fandom more than anything else. But I think it's generational. I think it's what era you came into. I don't think anyone would watch them now to be titillated, like you might have done in the 60s before you had like the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is my only chance to see a woman getting slapped on the arse. So I have to take it.
Yeah. Well, we do move to London now, and this entire... I guess it's like a half hour, whatever it is, before they get to Scotland. One of my favourite chunks of any Bond film ever, this whole action sequence on the underground, I absolutely love. The chase, the train coming through the wall, I absolutely love this whole thing. Judy Dench interrogating Javier Bardem, the big build-up to him potentially shooting her, and then he doesn't... Well, actually, Sol, did you think he was actually gonna kill her in that moment?
Well, only because I knew that she dies in this film, yeah.
Okay, but you thought it was going to happen there?
Well, only because I knew she died, and then Javier Bardem pulls a gun on her, and so I was like, oh, I guess that this will be it, and then she gets knocked down. It's like, oh, okay, maybe not.
Because it is very much set up as like, this is it. Like, she reads a poem, and, the music's swelling all that. I didn't.
No, before he walked in and pointed the gun at her, I didn't think this was it.
Oh, okay.
Can we? Did I miss something, by the way? Because he escapes Javier Bardem from like a glass prison, like Professor, not Professor, Magneto's kept in the X-Men.
Yes.
Well, like that's the only way to do in a future-y kind of vibe. You got to have a glass prison. But that's the only way to do it.
Did I miss the reason for that special, highly elaborate? Like perspex box in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any justification for that beyond just the visuals of it.
I would imagine it is largely because you can have these two having a conversation unobscured by bars or whatever. You can have them in the same shot looking at each other.
They just put him in a room, like a prison cell room.
Yeah, but it's not like there's a hatch leading to an underground tunnel system in it. Oh wait.
Oh god, I thought I'd missed something, and I was really confused by it. Like, what has he got? Powers? Why are they putting him in this
that's it. The
glass box?
Again, the problem here with all this escape thing is that we don't get much of a sense of what Javier Bardem... I have no idea what Javier Bardem's character is called, by the way.
Silva. Mr.
What?
Silva.
Silva.
Mr. Silva.
De Silva.
Raul Silva.
Okay. Well, the thing is, because we don't have much of a process for him, what his situation is, what his corporation thing is, so we don't know why. So he obviously has all these people helping him, getting him out of the building. He's got people inside MI6. Like, what, we don't really touch on that. And then everything is so perfectly timed. Like, he walks out of a door and someone hands him a parcel, and it's like, oh, behave yourself. It's just all a bit too...
Yeah, because I'll tell you what it is, Alan. It's because The Dark Knight had just come out before, like, same year, was it, as Quantum of Solace? Certainly, you know. This is the first film that's had a chance to rip it off, and they went, oh, we really like that Joker scene at the start with the bus.
Yeah, but that's the worst thing about that whole Joker scene.
Can we have a villain?
Is that they drive the school bus out of a smashed up building and just pull into traffic as if no one's going, oh, hang on, that bus just drove out of a bank. What's that about? Oh, we're looking for a school bus. We don't know which one it is. Is it the one with a load of bricks on the bonnet? Yeah. Oh, yeah, let's try that one.
They're obviously trying. Is it the school bus with a load of kids on it? No, it's probably the one with no passengers and just a clown at the
and some bullet holes in the side.
Which is also a totally different make of vehicle from what I remember as well, with a different paint job. But yeah, I think they were just trying to rip that whole Machiavellian madman thing off, and they don't really know how to do it, because at least with The Dark Knight, like, you know, they were making that character from the ground up, like, obviously drawing upon history, but this is just kind of like, oh yeah, it'd be good if we did a character who kind of does that at one point. And I agree, because it doesn't work, because this character's meant to be like intricately planned, blah 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 blah. But then ultimately Bond only catches up with him because he's stupid enough to not close a door behind him. Like, that was weak writing, that James Bond's lost him and then he notices a door's ajar.
I think it is...
Well, you'd close the fucking door, wouldn't you, if you were being chased by Bond? Because it would be obvious that if you leave the door open, that...
It is
a door that just happens to be unlocked and, like, openable, by the way.
It is, it's contrived, like, definitely, and I think it is a bit of a litmus test of how much you're willing to accept, like how much have you enjoyed the film at this point to kind of go with this ridiculous implausibility. As Alan said earlier on, it's like, it's one thing to kind of expect that they're going to plug in your laptop and release you that way. It's another thing to have it timed so that you're passing these guys who work for you in the station at this exact time. And the way the tube system works in London, if your plan is depending on the tube system to be running on time, it's not a good plan.
After they watched The Dark Knight, they were like, what other Batman villains can we rip off? And they got obsessed with the Clock King, Tempest Fugit, or whatever he's called.
Well, the thing is, right, the other unbelievable thing is, like, I jumped on the back of a tube train once, and first of all, there wasn't anyone stood in the back. And even if there was, they certainly wouldn't have just opened the door and let me in. And just go, oh, sorry about this, I'm just passing through, I nearly missed the train. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, certainly not a terrorist threat in any way.
I know, why didn't he flash his badge and be like, MI6? Instead they go for a health and safety inspector or whatever line, which is that one of the funny jokes, Calvin?
I like it.
I thought that was like, oh, we need to put a joke in on the set. Like, they realised that they needed to write a gag, and they didn't have any writers with them. They didn't have any comedians. They just had Sam Mendes, Daniel Craig, because it was like a skeleton crew doing that bit, because it was like a really tight tunnel in the underground. They were only allowed like 3 people there, and I guess they're just not funny, any of them.
I love the whole thing. I should hasten to add, like, this. I appreciate why if these things are sticking out to you, then yes, and there are certainly Bond films, certainly ones that we'll be getting to at some point in the future, that I do lose patience with some of the contrivances that are required. But this, I love it. I love the music. I love all the action stuff. It's great.
I don't know. I made the note dull around this point, and then my next note is finally interesting 100 minutes in when it becomes a Judy Dench buddy flick. So that must be the next bit.
Well, yes, because he has his failed assassination attempt, and then Bond gets M in the Aston Martin DB5, and it's very clear now what the whole... And it's very clear that the main scheme is just about killing her, basically.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. By the way, all his intricate scheming where he got caught on purpose and then delivered a virus and escaped through the tunnels. But his plan is burst into a room with lots of people in it and try and shoot Judi Dench in the face. Nice one, mate.
Yeah.
In like in a room with other very prominent like MPs and stuff, like a place that's going to be pretty well guarded. Let's put it that way.
Well, he gets in there. I mean, he gets in and fires his bullets off. He's just not a good shot, apparently.
Should have got closer. She's a small target. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So obviously, climax of this film set in Skyfall, Bond's childhood home, really, and it's sort of getting into a bit of what we've never had in the series before, exploring a bit about his childhood. His old gamekeeper, played by Albert Finney, is still here.
Before we get to this, I would have liked if the opening scene of this film had been, we've captured this guy, he's escaped, he's shot off a couple of bullets at Judi Dench, then we have 2 hours of James Bond and Judi Dench on the lam, like trying to find their way to Skyfall, like, bickering and staying in like shitty dive hotels and stuff. Like that would have been, and then the last half hour, you're at the house. That's how I would have done this film.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have loved it, but I don't know, the public probably wouldn't. But that was my favorite bit, was when she goes, "Oh, go on then, eject me." It's like, right, I want that for the rest of the film. Sadly, it doesn't really live up to that moment.
Saul, did you just cite a funny joke that worked for you?
Yeah, that was the one joke I mentioned earlier on when I said there's one bit.
I like the little bit where she gets in the car and then immediately drives off and Rory Kinnear's like, well, fuck me then.
He is very ineffective throughout this whole film. He's getting like instant messages like, get her out, and he's just not doing anything.
Is Rory Kinnear the one who, every time he was on screen, I just thought, like, was that guy in Johnny English as well? Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hang on. Where are we now? Let's address this, Calvin. The whole Bond backstory, childhood thing. Do we know prior to this? Do we know anything about any of that? Is this new?
Fleming he never went into too much detail about Bond's childhood. We know that his parents did indeed die in a climbing accident, as is mentioned here and was mentioned in GoldenEye. Skyfall as a lodge or a homestead, I don't know what you call it, has never been mentioned. That's complete invention for the film. Kincaid as well, I don't think he's ever been in a book or anything.
So I saw the grave of Bond's parents, and his mother had a very French name. What's that about?
Oh yes, she's Swiss.
She's Swiss. So his mother's Swiss, his dad's Scottish, and he's English? How does that work? He's very determined that he's English earlier on when he's country England. I think he's
true.
He's trying to hide something, isn't he? Don't want him to know he's Scottish.
I've never picked up on that before, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, I think that just like a Nigel Farage is, Farage. Come on.
Can I ask a question actually, Calvin? Because obviously it's all for Queen and country and stuff like that. Do you think when the Queen finally dies, will the Bond franchise sort of acknowledge it in some way?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I will say for the last 10 years, every time they've mentioned Her Majesty or whatever, I've thought oh God, you've edged your bets there.
I know, because it's 6 months before the film comes out.
Yeah.
They shot both ways. Come on.
It'll be
maybe
2 takes.
They probably call them Their Majesty these days anyway. It's woke gone mad, I tell you.
So, how does this all work for you then, this climax?
I really didn't like when they got there, because it just felt like that every time this happens in a film, it's like, for fuck's sake. Like when they go to Hawkeye's house in Avengers 2 and the movie stops dead, and it's just like, oh, why are we
why is
a family
Jeremy
home?
Renner in this film?
Yeah. And it just felt like that again. But then they set up, we're going to do Home Alone here. And I was like, okay, actually, that's all right. I'm into that. I'm into fortifying the home turf with, you've got very limited resources.
They get into the garage and they fortify a van with a load of welding equipment.
And I can't. I enjoyed this sequence, but it still really let me down insofar as like nothing about their plan was particularly clever or interesting. It was just, here's a bomb, I've got a gun. And it's like, this could have been really great. You could have seen some ingenuity from James Bond and M as well. And you just don't really get any of that.
Yeah, like working around, like, okay, we're not the strongest force. We're old and decrepit, but we're smart. We've got the smarts,
Again, I feel like I missed something here. So earlier on, James Bond is like shaking. He can't shoot straight. He's crap with a gun, and I don't really know why or how that happened anyway. But it's like, all right, he's broken.
He got shot in the shoulder. His arm doesn't work properly anymore.
Oh, is that all it was?
Well, psychological as well.
But then, how come he's suddenly a dab shot with a shotgun?
I'll tell you this, because what it is, when he goes in for those tests, he knows they're going to do blood tests and all that sort of shit, so he's clean. Whereas later on, he's got a few belts in him. He's got some. He's been hitting that Heineken or whatever it is that he loves to drink.
Oh yeah, that is what they would have up in that remote house up in Scotland.
Yeah. But that's it.
It would of course be Heineken on tap.
He's got the DTs, hasn't he? He's got the shakes in the test.
They probably have famous grouse, actually, wouldn't they? Albert Finney would probably be like, here we are, your dad's collection, famous grouse.
Okay, here's the question. You got the old. If you're gonna get an old Scottish man in your film out of nowhere for why don't you get Sean Connery?
So Kincaid turns up, the old groundskeeper. But I heard a rumor this was originally meant to be James Bond's dad. Is that accurate?
No. It was supposed to be Sean Connery. Which explains why...
I just completely misunderstood? I thought it was meant to be Sean Connery playing his dad.
No. It was, it was never going to be his parents, but the rumour is, I'm not sure if it has ever been 100% confirmed, but all signs point to... I mean, his first line, Albert Finney's, is Bond, James Bond, and if you had Sean Connery saying that line, it would have, but...
Well, here's the thing. If you haven't got Sean Connery... Why is this character even in the fucking film?
Well,
and why is he Scottish?
He's in Scotland.
Yeah, but why?
That's where
that's where Skyfall
his
dad lives.
Why? The whole thing just whatever. Albert Finney's not Scottish, is he? Is he from Yorkshire?
Bond, James Bond. I hadn't seen thee for years, lad.
That's it. Say, by the way, Skyfall's up in the Yorkshire moors. We've got to go up there. It works and it makes more sense.
Well, his dad's Scottish.
Yeah, but they've just made this up for that film. That's not like a thing.
Well, no. That's in the Flemings. That heritage.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
That's there in the original books.
All right. But didn't he only write that in after Sean Connery started playing the character with a Scottish accent, and he had to do damage control?
It's debatable. But I think you need that character there because I think you need someone to... Bond isn't doing much talking in this one. Even when Judy Dench tries to sort of coax him into talking a bit about his childhood, he's like, you know all this anyway. And I think the scene between her and him talking about the priest's hole... don't laugh. And his childhood, I think you need him there for that because Bond isn't gonna give up that information himself in this film.
Yeah, I mean that makes a real change from the last film they did, where Bond won't shut the fuck up about talking about his emotions.
Yep. Anyway, I think it's weird that they leave him alive. I think he's a bit of a loose end at the end where he's sort of hobbled with Judi Dench to the chapel and Javier Bardem shoots at him, telling him to sort of keep away. But I believe in that moment he would have just killed him, but they don't want to kill him because they probably think, oh, the audiences like him, and if we kill him, that'll be maybe a bit too much for the ending of this. But
I like Albert Finney. He's probably one of my... Yeah, it's probably my favourite actor turning up in a Bond film to date. Am I missing... I feel like I'm forgetting someone really obvious, but...
Alan Cumming?
Behave yourself.
Anyway, love all this stuff with the house blowing up. I think the music's great. I love it when they blow up the car.
You know what I really didn't like, and it reminded me how much I hate James Bond as a character.
That he gets pissed off about his car being blown up more than anything else in this film.
No, it's just, the really shitty attempt, and maybe this is another funny line to you. I thought it was a really bad, weak joke, and, like, why didn't they hire someone funny to just punch up the script like they apparently did for the latest one? But his line before he blows up the house is, I always hated this place. Fuck off, you posh git. It's a fucking lovely, beautiful old house. Sorry, we don't all have 10 houses to pick from, and we can just blow them up willy-nilly.
Don't forget about the family holiday home in Switzerland as well. They went skiing.
Oh, I like that. I don't know if it's supposed to be a joke or it's one of the only moments where he really even gives an opinion about the place and ergo his childhood.
Does imply he had quite a bad childhood somehow.
But it implies he had a bad childhood because he got taken on a lovely holiday to a beautiful part of Scotland, and he was like, Dad, fucking hell, I want to play PlayStation. And the parents were like, no, come on, Bond, we're going to go out shooting today. We're going to go out and have a hike. And he was like, fuck, I want to play Game Boy.
Didn't have PlayStations back then, so it was all battling tops and...
It's a sliding timeline.
Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
Sliding timeline.
Yeah, but even in the Daniel Craig timeline, it's still brought up in the 70s.
Yeah, but if they made young James Bond movie now, it'd be set in like the year 2000 probably.
Well, what happens at the end? What happens to Javier Bardem? I watched this film over 12 hours ago. So
he gets a knife in the back, but it's not particularly clear how it's shot. What's actually?
I thought she'd pulled the trigger and there wasn't a bullet in it.
Yeah,
I thought she was like finally doing the right thing and taking a boat out.
Yeah, it's really like not conveyed very well what's actually happened. Because to really sell it, Javier Bardem kind of goes and like pantomime like arcs his back. So you go, okay, I think there's something in his back, but he could just be having a heart attack. You
see it. There's a shot there where admittedly it is quite dark and you might miss it, but they do set up the knife earlier on. It's his dad's hunting knife. There was supposed to be more of a sequence here where Bond and him were going to go and have like a final fight in the woods, but they cut it, and I do feel like the film is missing a bit of like the house blowing up is this huge climax moment, but then there's still a fight underwater. There's still this thing in the chapel, and I don't feel like the knife in the back is as satisfying as it could be.
Yeah, this is what I mean about everything in this film just doesn't quite feel... It all feels very messy and not quite half-baked, I guess, and that's a shame, because this is apparently about as good as it gets. This is, the Bond people operating at peak filmmaking, and it's a shame because it's so close to working. Like, it's so close to being great. But it just doesn't quite... It's just a bit too messy for me.
That sounds like you're leading into a rating. Do you want to do it?
Do we have anything else to...
The only thing I wanted to ask was whether or not Judy Dench's death moved either of you to tears. Yep.
I think you got your answer there, Calvin.
Yeah. Never mind. Ratings.
I agree that this feels like a better made film in a lot of respects, but it's just missing, like you say, it's kind of unfocused. It needs a really good villain plot. I want the villain in more before the halfway point. The Judi Dench stuff is nice, but then, okay, well, maybe let's focus on that. But all Bond films are just like, well, we want to do this plot, but then we have to have an action scene here, and we have to do this. They're always like that. So, anyway, it's all right. I gave it a 7.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. I definitely liked this more than most of them, and I liked bits about this more than possibly any of them. And I might even go so far as to say you could probably edit together a 90-minute film that would be my favourite James Bond film using the footage from this film. I still wouldn't be in love with it. But yeah, it was just a bit too messy and unfocused in what it was trying to do and how it was doing it. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, I think. It's...
Oh, I had higher hopes earlier on in this podcast.
I think I preferred Casino Royale.
And
I only gave that a 6 because the ending annoyed me too much. So I don't think I can give this a higher rating than that.
Oh, well, I like I say, earlier on in this, I was getting my hopes up. I thought it might well still end up being the highest rated Bond film we've ever done on this. Anyway, it's one of my favourites. It's up there at the very top. I've seen this film more times than I care to say, and it's a brilliant experience every time. I always enjoy watching it. 10 out of 10. Perfect.
Wow.
That probably will be the highest rated one we've had.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, well, I'm happy that you both got something positive out of it.
Well, can I ask Sol a quick question as well, looking forward to the next one? You've obviously see that Ralph Fiennes is coming in as a new M. How do you feel about that?
Completely indifferent.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I will say I'm looking forward to the new Bond, and we'll get back to some comedy stuff. I think we're ready. We're ready for a new take on it. Who've they got, Calvin? Who's the new Bond?
No one yet. Barbara Broccoli's producing Daniel Craig in Macbeth on Broadway at the moment, so I think we'll wait for that too.
What? Okay.
Yeah, he's doing Macbeth, and she's producing it. So yeah.
Does he do the Scottish accent?
I've no idea. I have seen pictures of them doing the final curtain call, and he's got like a bulletproof vest on, and he's got blood on him. So I don't really know what that's about.
To be or not to be, not to be. And then he shoots him. Calvin, let me throw some names out at you. People that next Bond. Say what you think.
Okay. Quick fire round.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh no. Wait, is this just my own personal preference, or whether or not I think it's likely?
Both.
Okay.
I think they should.
No.
I think they should get an actor in. I think that should be the least they do.
Well, it's never stopped them before, has it? Okay. Daniel Kaluuya.
Possibly and possibly.
No, wait. Did you see him when he won his Oscar and he went up and started thanking God? They don't want that in press conferences.
Oh no, really? Oh, okay. I changed my answers.
Yeah.
Carrie Mulligan.
No and no. Barbara Broccoli has already said that Bond won't be a woman.
But Barbara Broccoli must be getting on a bit now. When is she going to die? We move on to the...
That's the point.
What's the next
She's
Broccoli?
only 60.
Who's the next Broccoli generation?
Yeah, who's the next Broccoli?
Well, they have had kids. Barbara Broccoli has a daughter, and her half-brother, Michael G. Wilson, who she co-produces with, has a couple of sons. So maybe...
God, they really are a fucking dynasty. Jesus Christ.
I kind of like that it's a family-run sort of thing. I think it's cute.
Yeah, well, it's all going to be Jeff Bezos from now on, so get used to that.
It's going to be Barbara Bezos next.
Yeah, exactly.
His daughter. She's going to come in and sort it out.
What do you think the next Bond movie is going to look like? Do you think it's going to go straight to Amazon Prime? Do you think they'll give it a limited run in the cinema, and then it'll be like Amazon Prime exclusive?
I think as long as they can keep making the amount of money out of it that they do, I think they will still keep on putting it in cinemas. But I agree. I think from a marketing standpoint, it's going to be harder for them if the brand just associates with Amazon. Then I think it makes it harder for them to coax people out.
What do you think the odds are that in the first 20 minutes there's going to be a knock at the door? James Bond's going to go down. It's going to be an Amazon delivery driver giving him a box, and he opens it up, and it's got like a gadget from Q in it or something, or like a.
Well, they're not shy about the product placement in these films,
exactly.
Are they? So,
it's gonna be. Right, they're gonna be like, we need to get this message through, past the villain's henchman or whatever. Oh, I've got an idea, and they go to Amazon like warehouse. They've got a contact there. The new character is he's called
Beth Jesus.
He's called A. He's called A. And,
fair.
And he's like, oh yeah, I'll sort you out, no problem. And they fly like a little drone with like an Amazon delivery box through the villain's defenses. Oh god.
There's going to be some kind of villain in space. Bond has to travel to space. And they're like,
in a knob rocket.
But Bond, we don't have the infrastructure anymore. NASA aren't launching anything. What are we going to do? Well, don't worry, I know someone. I know a guy.
He's actually going to do it, isn't he? He's going to play himself in Bond.
Richard Branson did it.
He's just... Yeah, but he's going to be Bond's sidekick for like the whole movie. There's going to be like beautiful women coming up and going hello, and Bond going, oh god, not another one. And then she's sort of like, actually, I was more interested in your friend. And the camera pans across.
Do you know what? That's what billionaires should be doing. If you're a billionaire, buy your favorite film franchise just so that you can hammer yourself into it.
Yeah,
that is what
Kim Jong-un's got
should
the right
be
idea,
doing with their money. Go to space for no reason. Yes, that's what money is for.
I bet he doesn't like James Bond because he would be a villain in a James Bond movie. He is that archetype. He's the
like
bold,
Rupert Murdoch
like,
buys the Bond franchise.
Funny man, billionaire with a rocket going to space, nefarious plans. Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. That's Skyfall. The sky.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Thank you for that discussion. I thought that was really fun and yes, good.
Yes, thank you, Calvin. Thanks for joining us. Only two left.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Oh
wait, have we not done Never Say Never Again?
Not yet.
Oh yes, so that one. You'll hate that.
Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy the show, please help spread the word by telling a friend or loved one about this mighty podcast. Or of course you could follow us on the social media at Dim Returns Pod. Or you could rate and review us on iTunes. Only positive reviews, please, because that helps spread the word a little bit, gets us out there. Give us a boost if you're a fan. And of course, if you're really so inclined, you could join our Patreon. Patreon.com/Dim Returns, and you can get all sorts of extra content on there. But in the meantime, keep up to date with our regular episodes, and of course, Calvin Dyson will return in Spectre, but probably before that as well. So until next time, Bond fans,